Well, welcome back. Today's the day. Finally. This has taken a long time. I've got gray now. I told you I was worried about aging, but I don't know. We'll see. It's pretty interesting information. We've got several products here and multiple runs to get to today. There's way too much information. I'm still parsing through it. Honestly, I wanted to get some at least some preliminary summary data out to everybody to see how things are going. Thank you for those who looked at the methodology. I don't want to have to rehash all of that. I'll make sure that I give you guys a link to that initial video to show you how I'm going to do the tests. I ended up making some adjustments to what I ended up testing and how I tested. When you're looking at an enthusiast product, especially when you're looking at, heavy duty blocks, and surprisingly this little coolants block did pretty good. It did well, but it's under certain conditions. They all shined under certain conditions. I'm going to be digging in, looking at how many watts things used and help to determine really which one's the better option. We'll get to the results here really quickly, but I did want to make sure that you understood how I tested. I'll give a little bit of a synopsis and an example of the calculations I did. Because of all of those tests, I needed to try to figure out a way to have one reportable number, and that would be relatable across the gamut of situations and scenarios. So I realize this is a lot. I'm taking some liberties, but I'm being as transparent as I possibly can. And in the comment section, if you like the way that I've done it, or you think that there was another way that I should have it, I'm keeping the test bench and the rig together. It's still the same i9-14900k, and obviously I can't put the lid back on and rerun those early tests, which I'll tell you, how I ended up doing this and some of the initial summary as well. So let's get to it. I appreciate everyone's time and attention. Hopefully you find this as interesting and as exciting as I have. I'm glad all the testing is over. So let's get to this. Okay, so here is the results we've all been waiting for, myself included. Let's see what we can glean from all of this testing. So again, this is just going to be a summary trying to look at primarily temperature, maybe a little bit of performance. But let's talk about how we did it. Hopefully we can see my mouse here, and I'll point out a few things along the way. Briefly, I don't want the video to be too long. So the test to gauge performance. We had 4 for performance. Again, performance wasn't really what it was all about. It was keeping things cool. But then I thought, who's going to spend all this time, energy, money, delid, void warranties, and not have an interest in some level of performance? And so I added an overclock to the test procedure. So in performance test, I set the BIOS up, default settings, XMP1, and let it cap at 253 watts with the new BIOS code that is supposed to protect our CPUs now. So but after that, I ran all the tests with the OEM BIOS settings, and I got concerned that maybe I wasn't going to see a difference. I see a difference, but I also wanted to give it an overclock, and then this is where the great debate's going to be, because everyone's going to say, I would overclock it like this, you should have done that, you didn't mess with the voltages, you should have messed with So what is the easiest, most simple thing? It's to use the Intel Software Extreme Tuning Utility and do the automatic overclock. So the OEM settings were limiting the watts and using the standard 57x, 44x for P core, E core multiplier. And then when you do the auto overclock, it moves up to 58x and 45x and doesn't pull back any voltages. So it will get warm. So that's the most easy, basic way to do it. And when we get an opportunity to talk about the overclock, then we'll delve into that. But these are the tests used for performance, And then based on those particular scores, performance test, Cinebench 23, 24, anything OEM for the BIOS, nothing overclock in this particular summary on this video, I did an average of the scores across the board for each setup. And the same thing for temperature. So there were 6 tests for temperature, and they're listed for you there. And out of all of those, with the max temperature readings that were normalized to a starting water temp of 22 degrees. Then I chose the average scores to give an overall heat score, performance score. So this is a quick screenshot of just some raw temp data for heat. Right? It's much bigger than this, but I wanted to go through some of the things that I was working on. So as I was going down through my tests and filing away the normalized max heat scores across the board, I wanted to point out that I did not do the tests for the contact frame, the lapped OEM IHS with the coolants block. In my mind, this older block is not going to be used. It was just for me, for fun. And then I didn't run those tests. I thought, well, I'm probably done for this. I'm never going to get through all these tests. Let's just get through the blocks people are going to use. And then I, for fun, threw it on here and thought, man, it's kind of keeping up. And so I tried to stick with it. So the only reason why I don't have data here is I've decided not to run it at the time, and then felt guilty and went back and did it. But at that point, I couldn't. The lid was already off, and I can't undo that. So I just don't have data for that. If there was thermal throttling, then I didn't bother to run the test. One of the things that I realized, it was too late into the game. I should have paid more attention, but the biggest heat generator really is Prime 95, and I would start with Prime 95. If it throttled on Prime 95, it's going to throttle, and I didn't bother to run some of these tests. This Core 1 entry down here, if you notice, it's the same. So this entry was generated in error. So I copied too many, basically. And I didn't need to have this entry, but I didn't want to change the test number. So there are no tests on 37 because that's a duplicate field. It's up here, and it throttled on Prime 95, and it's not included. I didn't go with that. So, and then finally, the other piece to consider is the Iceman D-lid die guard. D-lid the CPU, put that die guard on, and then set the cooler directly on top. The Optimus block does not make contact with that direct die guard. It sits too low, and because of the heft, the literal size and weight of that sucker, it fouls with the other components around the CPU socket before it sits flush against the die. So unfortunately, no fault of the Optimus block. It wasn't designed to use that, and I can't test it in that situation. But the coolants block and the Core 1 block was a thin enough piece of mass, if you will, and it would clear those, and I could get a modified mount, which we'll go over in greater detail when the time comes. I can test those. I couldn't test the Optimus, and so then you see sort of an example of how I've worked my way through this. But let's get rid of this raw data and let's talk about how I ended up doing it. So this is the Prime 95 run. Test number 33, used the heat spreader, a D-lidded CPU using liquid metal on the die underneath the heat spreader, and then on top of the heat spreader, liquid metal to the Optimus block, and then my starting water temp, ending water temp, the delta, starting CPU temp, ending CPU temp, the delta, normalized to 22 degrees, my vid, my watts. This is the fastest P-core option, and it was a 10-minute test. Out of all of that data, today, this normalized value got put into that one cell to create the average across the board on this particular setup. And this was compiled of each of these tests performed. And then based on the numbers, I ended up with a mean heat number for these tests. Forget about the overclocking right now. There's still a lot to be discussed. But that gives you an idea of exactly how I did it. It's open, honest, not playing with the numbers. I'm just trying to find a way to consistently report values. So that was we're looking at means today across the board in terms of heat and performance. Excuse me. So the top 5 setups that run the coolest. You see the delidded CPU, and one thing you'll notice, the micro direct die takes the top spot there, 66.4 degrees, and it kind of separated itself a little bit because everything else is pretty much 69 to 73 degrees. So everything else pretty much works on par. If you look at the performance scores, that micro direct die took the top spot, but again, these are capped with the BIOS only preventing certain watts from happening. There was small fluctuations in the wattage that was given to the CPUs, and that might see the variance in terms of your performance scores, but there still was a difference to be noted. So if you're not interested in that Direct Die Pro V1, check out that Optimus block. So, and not only liquid metal, but also a thermal paste option. But please note that if you want the best bang for the buck in terms of cooling performance, you've got liquid metal on top of the die. You can have situations where you can get away with thermal paste between the cooler and whatever medium is between that, if it's not a direct die option. But if you want the best heat transference from the die to the block, or die to a frame, or die to a copper IHS, use liquid metal. Now, I'll give you a frame of reference. There were 33 configurations that didn't throttle, and they range anywhere from 66.4 to 83.4. The top 10 plus an honorable mention. And by the way, check out that coolants block, hanging in there, top 10, 11. Look at that. It was shocking. Like, I feel really bad not running that lapped tests on the coolants block. Maybe it would have done well, but that's for another discussion in terms of the differences in the blocks that I was able to notice, and setting them up, and ease of getting good contact, and that's another time. We're focused on the day-to-day. And then you look at the minimum temperature was 59.6. That was on a performance test. The performance tests don't take very long. They run about minute and a half ish. You really got to keep your eyes peeled on the water temps, because it changes quickly and it drops pretty quickly. The maximum temperature recorded without throttling was 95.7 degrees. That was the Core 1 Iceman die guard, and of course it was a Prime 95 run. Prime 95 really generated the most heat across the board, but the coolest performers were not always the best performing. Sort of highlighted that with my data in red with the performance scores, but let's just organize those performers from fastest to slowest. So you see, again, the top spot is the Micro Direct Die Pro V1, and then you've got different options, and you've got the Optimus showing up 1, 2, 3, 4 times on that list. It's truly is an excellent block. Check out the coolants block. That old coolants block is hanging right in there. This truly surprised me. But again, this is on the D-lid die guard, a custom mounting solution to sandwich it to the board, and using liquid metal. So it still was hanging in there. It took a little bit of modification, but still worked. That gives you sort of some comfort that maybe some other blocks that I didn't test in here maybe or might do just fine. The Core 1 was also on the die guard, and it was, with a degree or two. And the other direct die cooler got honorable mention down there. This one didn't perform as well as I was hoping it would, but liquid metal is also one of those things that you need to use on the die for best performance. When I tried doing this with paste, even these blocks would throttle. The paste did not seem to transfer the heat well enough, unfortunately. And if you look at the performance scores, there's not a huge difference in these top 11 with the honorable mention. It's probably because of the limited voltage that's supplied by the BIOS. But you at least have some data here now to go on to see which one you would like to choose or which one you think is reasonable performance for you. But all of those other ones void your warranty. What if you want to keep your warranty? What if I'm not interested in overclocking? I just really want what's my coolest solution. That will make you need to go down the list to the 16th ranked test. And shockingly, the OEM ILM takes the top spot. But again, you got the Optimus blocks hanging in there. 2 Optimus, 2 Core 1s, and 2 coolants values. There was only these that didn't throttle. You do have a little bit of a performance hit there. It's a drop. I can't gauge how much of a drop that really is in terms of, will you notice a difference? Probably not. But we're paying attention to details here. But if you look at the cooling numbers, if you keep the warranty versus trying to go with the maximum potential, it's about a 9-degree difference. If you're okay with that, keep your warranty by all means. That's good information. It's nice to know that there's ways to keep your warranty and then still have decent performance. Pick up that Optimus block. All 3 of these really worked really well. I mean, I'm not trying to be promoting for Optimus block. Nobody's paying me for any of this. By all means, somebody pay me. I'm teasing. I'm not. Anyway, so you've got Optimus block with a contact frame or an OEM ILM. Again, only thermal paste is an option to keep your warranty. I thought liquid metal would have been okay, and then when we saw this post about an individual who tried to warranty his CPU, but because he used liquid metal, it wore away all the printed material on top of the lid, and because they couldn't get the serial, all the details off of it, warranty is not valid. So you can't trust liquid metal if you're just going to try to keep your warranty, even if you're trying to keep the OEM solder. You got to stick with a thermal paste. Choose a thermal paste you're happy with, and a cooler you're happy with, and run with it. You get good performance, not the best, as this study shows. But what about overclocking? That information is coming. I'm delving into that. Does it offer us, if you use these more advanced methods to cool, does it offer you enough headroom when overclocking to still keep your CPU cool enough? And then I also want to make a video about delidding. There's other videos out there, and they're a little misleading because I was using YouTube to help me understand the delidding process and the different manufacturers, and I've got a couple here. I want to go through it. I might delid one of my KS's because I've got the data here now to start making modifications to some computers. Who knows? Maybe that might be good information for other people to have. Not being somebody who is a pro at this, I'm not like a DeBauer who delids all these CPUs and can do it in his sleep. I'll go over some of the blocks and concerns and processes so that you don't kill a CPU, unfortunately, like I did once already. So, thermal paste versus liquid metal. We talked briefly about liquid metal, but I'm going to go into some of the details here and show you guys really the difference. I had no idea that liquid metal really was that needed, but on the die, it really does. And there is a thermal difference. You'll notice that thermal paste on the die never really showed up anywhere, so that's concerning, or at least take note. And then I have put these blocks on and off with the different frames a million times, ripped my fingers up trying to get these suckers mounted down, and which ones really worked well. Did I have failures? Did I have any concerns? Now, nobody here is going to be hopefully not putting these blocks on and off their motherboard as many times as I've just been doing, which is a good thing. But there's some concerns and some thoughts I have about some of these products. So we'll work through that in a future video. So, okay, hopefully you found that information interesting. If there's some critiques, questions, concerns, you want to get some clarification on something, I'm happy to put out more information. I've got more detail that I'm trying to delve through, but I thought this was enough to wet everybody's whistle, so to speak, and see where we're heading with this. So it's really good preliminary data. It's encouraging that there's still decent ways to do it, not void your warranty, but looking at the combination between everything that's available that I've been able to find. I know there's some blocks out there that I didn't have my hands on. I did not get any company support for any of this, so it all came out of my pocket. It's a lot of cash outflow in terms of blocks, and a lot that I'm not going to be using from this point on. I'll keep them for a while in case there's concerns or further clarification with the test rig. If there's other people that want other blocks looked at, I'll keep the same process if you are happy with this type of testing situation. So, all right, let's sum it up.
So, there you have it. There is a lot of information. Like I said, I'm still going to go through. There's still a lot of questions I want to have answered through the data that I've collected. Get down into the weeds, the nitty-gritty of some of the voltages and types of tests. And if anybody out there is like, well, I really just like to see the data on Prime 95 or the performance test data. How many watts, how many, this, that, and the other. I'm willing to see what I can do for you guys. Like I said, I'm going to be open and transparent about it. I'm sure the testing's not perfect, but I did give it my best to try to limit variables and variabilities. We need to talk about overclocking, because a lot of you are not going to spend this kind of money and then leave it stock settings. Although I think that you probably could with a 14900K, or what it's going into is my 14900KS.
This is my current build, the big office build, if you will, and I've gotten burned, as I said before, about the single pump going out, water flow stopped, wreaked havoc on my previous system. So I've alleviated that with redundant pumps. This is a serious overkill build for sure. I'll do probably just a rundown of what this system entails, but everything's water cooled. But if you notice, there's an Optimus block already installed in this system. So I tested with a second Optimus block, and if it wasn't for DeBauer being open, honest, and professional about his assessment and his testing between the his direct die product and the Optimus block, I have a much more respect for him, his channel, the way he tests, his professionalism. That's definitely something to aspire to. So thank you, sir. Because of that, I did recognize how good those Optimus blocks are, and that's been running in my rig even before I did this test. I didn't want to tear my rig down, that's why I bought a second. So there will be more information coming on this build, and then how I adapt from the data moving forward.
So a little bit of overclocking might be in order, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people say, well, I would have never overclocked that way. But again, it was doing it for a standard, looking to stress the CPU, didn't pull back any voltage, so you could probably, almost with certainty, tweak your overclock and get better performance than what I had, and make it run cooler. But if you pair it on top of some of these things, then perhaps you'll have the best bang for your buck if you want to move this direction. The choice is yours. You guys decide what you want to do with this information. And again, more videos coming. I'll just put out maybe a few more result videos. There's a few more that I want to take care of with overclocking, delitting, to try to make sure that you guys don't make some mistakes that I made. Some were pretty costly, and I'm tired of buying CPUs. And we'll see where we go from here. I appreciate it. See you soon.